Trent Dawson ruled the school until he messed with the wrong girl. What happened next shocked everyone. It began with a look. Not the kind you ignore, but the kind that stays. The kind that makes you feel unwelcome. 16-year-old Jasmine Whitfield had lived in Summit Ridge, Idaho for only 3 weeks, but she already knew she didn't fit in. She wasn't surprised. Her father's job forced them to move often, and some towns were friendly, while others made sure newcomers felt out of place. Summit Ridge High was the latter. Jasmine walked through the halls, her backpack hanging from one shoulder, avoiding trouble. Her dad had warned her about boys like Trent Dawson, the type who acted like they owned the school and everyone in it. She had hoped to stay unnoticed, but that hope faded fast. On her third day, Trent made her his new target. It started with whispers when she walked by. Then his friends laughed just loud enough for her to hear. Next came the insults about her hair, her voice, even the way she walked. She ignored them. Experience had taught her that was safest. But Trent hated being ignored. One afternoon, Jasmine sat in English class, taking notes as Mr. Holloway talked about The Great Gatsby. A sharp whisper broke the silence. "Hey, new girl." She didn't look up. "I'm talking to you, Whitfield." She kept her eyes on her notebook, gripping her pen tighter. Trent smirked, leaning back in his chair. "I just think it's funny some people show up where they don't belong." A few kids giggled. Jasmine kept writing, forcing herself to stay calm. "But hey," Trent went on, his voice mocking, "maybe you're just lost. A school like this with people like us must feel weird, huh?" Jasmine's chest tightened, but she stayed silent. She had promised herself not to let boys like him win. Trent wasn't done. He leaned closer. "Hey, Whitfield. You deaf? Or is it hard to hear over all that?" "Trent?" Mr. Holloway's voice cut in, sharp and impatient. "Do you have something to share with the class?" Trent leaned back, raising his hands in fake surrender. "No, sir, just welcoming the new student." Mr. Holloway gave him a sharp look before turning back to the board. Trent flashed Jasmine one last grin before sitting down. She let out a quiet breath. Maybe it's over. Maybe he'll get bored. Then a folded note landed on her desk. Her fingers hesitated before opening it. "Go back to where you came from." Jasmine's chest tightened, but she didn't react. She wouldn't give him the win. She folded the paper, tucked it into her bag, and kept her face blank as class continued. But things were only beginning. Trent Dawson had no idea who her father was, and soon he'd find out. But first, things were about to get much worse. Jasmine had dealt with bullies before. She'd moved enough times to know guys like Trent were everywhere. But bullies had one rule. If you didn't fight back, they pushed harder. Friday, the cafeteria. The room buzzed with noise, trays clattering, voices shouting, the smell of greasy pizza and old fries in the air. Jasmine sat alone at a corner table, earbuds in, pretending not to hear the whispers. Then she felt it. Him. She looked up. Trent stood a few feet away, hands in his Letterman jacket, that same smug grin on his face. Behind him, his friends Liam, Kyle, and Chase watched, waiting for the show. "You always eat alone?" Trent asked. Jasmine stayed silent. You should try making friends. He glanced at her untouched tray, then at his buddies. Or maybe no one wants to sit with you, Kyle snorted. Liam added, maybe she likes being a loner. Trent stepped closer. Or maybe she just doesn't belong here. Jasmine's hands curled under the table, but she didn't move. Trent hated being ignored. In one quick motion, he grabbed her tray and flipped it. Crash! The sound echoed through the cafeteria. Food splattered across the floor. Mashed potatoes on her shoes. Milk spreading in a white puddle. Gasps, muffled laughs. Jasmine's fists clenched. Trent's grin widened. Oops. She stared at the mess, her face burning. Everyone watched, waiting. Would she cry, yell, run? Slowly, she pushed her chair back. Calmly, she wiped her hands with a napkin and stood. She wouldn't give him what he wanted, but Trent wasn't done. As she turned to leave, he blocked her path. Hey, where you going? We're just getting to know each other. Jasmine took a deep breath. Move. The cafeteria went silent. Trent's smile faltered for a second. What was that? His voice dripped with amusement. She met his eyes. I said, move. His friends laughed. Whoa! Liam chuckled. She's got a mouth. Trent stepped closer, inches from her now. Or what? Jasmine's pulse pounded in her ears. Her fingers twitched. Then, what the hell is going on here? Miss Ree, the assistant principal, marched over, heels clicking on the tile. Her sharp eyes darted between Jasmine and Trent, then to the spilled food. Trent's grin vanished. He backed up, playing innocent. Nothing, Miss Ree. Just an accident. Miss Ree didn't buy it. She looked at Jasmine. Is that true? Jasmine hesitated. If she told the truth, nothing would change. Guys like Trent never got punished. She glanced around. No one spoke up for her. Swallowing hard, she muttered, yeah, accident. Trent smirked. Miss Ree sighed. Clean this up. And just like that, it was over. As Trent's friends laughed and walked away, he called over his shoulder, see you Monday, Whitfield. Jasmine stood there staring at the mess. She thought of her dad, how he always told her to stand up for herself. But what was the point when no one listened? Jasmine grabbed her backpack and walked out of the cafeteria. But this time, she wasn't going to let it slide. The house was silent when she got home. Too silent. She dropped her bag by the door and kicked off her shoes, still stained with mashed potatoes from lunch. She didn't even want to look at them. Jasmine, that you? Her father's voice came from the kitchen. Elliot Whitfield wasn't a man who missed details. As Summit Ridge's new police chief, he'd spent years reading people, noticing things others overlooked. Jasmine hesitated. Yeah, it's me. She walked into the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, still in his uniform, holding a fresh cup of coffee. His short hair was graying at the sides, and his sharp brown eyes studied her face before she could even sit down. You okay? He asked. She forced a shrug. Yeah. Chief Whitfield took a slow sip of coffee, still watching her. "How was school?" Jasmine slid into a chair, tracing a scratch on the wooden table. "Fine." A pause. Then he set his cup down. "Try again." She exhaled. She should have known. She could never hide things from him. But part of her didn't want to talk about it. What was the point? Nothing ever changed. Elliot crossed his arms. "Jasmine." She kept her eyes on the table, her voice quieter than she meant it to be. "Some kid dumped my lunch on me today." The words hung in the air. Her father didn't react right away. He was too controlled for that. But his eyes darkened slightly, his jaw tightening. "Who?" Jasmine hesitated. She didn't want to say the name. She didn't want him storming to the school and making things worse. Experience had taught her that calling out guys like Trent Dawson only made them worse. "It doesn't matter," she muttered. Her father's voice was calm but firm. "It does." She rubbed her hands together. "Trent Dawson." Something flickered in his expression. Recognition. Jasmine frowned. "You know him?" Her father was silent for a moment, then he let out a slow breath. "I know his family." Jasmine scoffed. "Of course you do." Elliot tapped his fingers against the counter. "And the school? What did they do?" She hesitated. "Nothing." That got his attention, his gaze sharpened. "Nothing." She shook her head. "Miss Ree showed up, asked if it was an accident. I said yes." Elliot frowned. "Why?" Jasmine met his eyes, frustration rising. "Because if I told the truth, nothing would have happened." "You really think they'd punish Trent Dawson?" "His dad's probably on the school board or something," Jasmine muttered. Her father leaned forward, arms still crossed. "And what message does that send?" She blinked. "What?" "When someone does something wrong," he said, voice steady, "and we let it slide. What message does that send to them?" "To you?" Jasmine had no answer. He sighed, shaking his head. "Jasmine, I get it. You don't want to make a scene. But letting things like this go, that's how people like him keep getting away with it." She clenched her jaw, looking away. I don't want to make it worse." Elliot stayed quiet for a long moment. Then he walked over and rested a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to fight this alone." Jasmine swallowed hard. She wanted to believe him, but she wasn't sure things could change. What she didn't know, her father wasn't going to let this slide. And tomorrow, Trent Dawson would learn exactly who he'd messed with. Monday morning, something felt different the second Jasmine stepped out of her dad's car. There was a shift in the air. Whispers in the hallways, stares from other students. Not the usual smirks or sneers, but something new. Curiosity, unease, something had changed. She barely made it to her locker before she got her answer. "Dude, the police chief is here," someone whispered. Jasmine's stomach dropped. She turned toward the main office, and there he was, Chief Elliot Whitfield, standing tall in his uniform, badge shining under the bright lights. His presence alone made teachers stand straighter. "Oh my God," Jasmine breathed. Before she could react, the office door swung open. "Chief Whitfield." "I really don't see why this had to be taken so far," said Principal Warren, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a tight smile. Behind him stood Miss Rhee along with Transparence. Jasmine's breath caught. Darren and Lauren Dawson looked exactly like she'd imagined. Darren, tall and broad-shouldered in an expensive suit, had the air of a man who never got questioned. Lauren, in a cream cashmere sweater, clutched her designer purse like armor. And then there was Trent, standing beside them, his usual smirk gone. For the first time, he looked confused, like he didn't understand how this had happened. Chief Whitfield didn't even glance at him. His focus was on Principal Warren. "I took it this far," Elliot said, voice calm but firm, "because my daughter was humiliated in your cafeteria, and your staff let it happen." Miss Rhee cleared her throat. "With all due respect," Chief Elliot cut her off. "You saw what happened, and you let her take the blame." Darren Dawson laughed dryly, shaking his head. "Chief, come on. They're kids. It was just a misunderstanding." Elliot finally turned to him. "A misunderstanding?" His voice didn't rise, but it turned sharp, dangerous. "Your son targeted my daughter, bullied her, humiliated her in front of the whole school." Lauren sighed dramatically. "Chief Whitfield, do you know how often we get calls over silly things like this? Boys will be boys." Jasmine's fists tightened. Elliot didn't flinch. "That's the problem," he said. "People like you raise boys like him and then wonder why they grow up thinking they can get away with anything." Trent shifted uncomfortably. For the first time, he looked small. Principal Warren forced another smile. "Let's not make this worse. Maybe we can work something out." "No." Elliot's voice was firm. "No deals, just consequences." A heavy silence filled the office. Jasmine swallowed hard. She had never seen her father like this, not just as her dad, but as Chief Whitfield. Lauren Dawson sighed dramatically, glancing at her son. "Trent, apologize." Trent's jaw tightened. "Mom," he let out a slow breath and turned to Jasmine. His usual arrogance was gone, replaced with something new. Humiliation. "Sorry," he muttered. Elliot raised an eyebrow. "Louder." Trent's ears turned red through gritted teeth. He said, "I'm sorry." Jasmine knew it wasn't real. She knew he didn't mean it, but for once, he wasn't the one in charge. Elliot turned back to Principal Warren. "This isn't over. I want a full report. And if this school has a history of ignoring bullying, I will find out." Darren Dawson's face hardened. "You don't want to make enemies with the wrong people, Chief." Elliot met his stare. "Neither do you." Then he walked out. The aftermath. By lunchtime, the whole school was talking. Whispers followed Jasmine down the halls. Some kids avoided her, others stared. A few even gave her small nods. Respect. Trent, though, he wasn't handling it well. She saw it in the way he stormed into the cafeteria, jaw clenched, fists tight. His usual confidence had been replaced with something uglier. Anger, shame, frustration. Jasmine knew guys like him. They hated feeling powerless. So when she walked past him to grab a tray, he muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "Guess Daddy had to fight your battles for you, huh?" Jasmine froze. The noise of the cafeteria faded. She turned slowly, meeting his glare. "What did you just say?" Trent took a step closer, lips curled in a sneer. "You heard me. You think this makes you special? That people actually care about you? The second your dad's gone, you're nothing again." Jasmine's pulse pounded. But this time, she didn't walk away. She straightened her shoulders, lifting her chin. "You're mad." Trent blinked, caught off guard. "What?" She tilted her head. "You thought you'd get away with it like always. But for once, someone actually stopped you." His sneer flickered. Jasmine took a step forward, closing the gap between them. "That's why you're mad. Because now everyone knows the truth. You're not untouchable." And now, she lowered her voice. "They don't respect you. They pity you." Trent's face turned red. "Shut up." She smiled. "Make me." For the first time, he was the one backing down. His fists shook, but he didn't say another word. Instead, he turned and stormed out, shoving past his friends. Jasmine exhaled, adrenaline still rushing through her. She could feel everyone watching, but for the first time since moving here, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel like an outsider. She felt seen. The shift. By the end of the day, things had changed. Kids who once laughed at Trent's jokes now ignored him. The whispers weren't about her anymore. They were about him. Trent kept his head down. Jasmine didn't need an apology. She didn't need him to admit he was wrong because the truth was simple. He had already lost. The moment her father walked into that office, the moment the school was forced to face the truth, Trent's power was gone. Without it, he was just another kid. The ride home. Jasmine climbed into her dad's car, shutting the door behind her. Elliot glanced at her. "How was school?" She hesitated, then smiled for the first time in weeks. "Not bad." Her father smirked, pulling out of the parking lot. "See, people like Trent only have power if you give it to them." Jasmine looked out the window. "Yeah, I get that now." A comfortable silence settled between them. Then Elliot spoke again. "You know, I didn't stand up for you because I thought you were weak." She frowned. "What?" He kept his eyes on the road. "I did it because I knew you weren't. I just needed you to see it for yourself." Jasmine's throat tightened. For so long, she had felt powerless, like the only way to survive was to stay quiet, to disappear. But today, she learned something important. Standing up for yourself isn't about fighting back. It's about knowing your worth. And once you know that, no one can take it away from you. Brought to you by Black Struggles.